This episode is proudly sponsored by HASA, the trusted choice for liquid chlorine. It's better because it offers the highest purity, works instantly, and contains no added CYA. By the bottom feeder, professional-grade battery-powered swimming pool vacuum system, it sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off the bottom feeder with code DVB100. Skimmer, trusted by over 30,000 pool service professionals across North America. Skimmer software helps you save time, grow revenue, and boost your 5-star reviews. Whether you're just starting out or expanding your team, Skimmer's easy-to-use tools and expert support have you covered. Upgrade your business in 2025 with Skimmer. Try Skimmer for 30 days for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. I wanted to kind of piggyback off of the last episode where I talked to Steve Homer of UPA, and we talked about liability issues in the industry, and he focused mainly on the UPA end of it with their insurance, their general liability insurance. And I want to talk some more about some things that could cause liability out there on your pool service route. Join my coaching program and take your pool service to the next level. Connect with other pool pros in your area, gain valuable knowledge, and transform your business with personalized one-on-one advice from me. With over 36 years of experience, I'm here to help you succeed like never before. Learn more at poolguycoaching.com. And again, I think the United Pool Association's insurance is great. Just go to unitedpoolassociation.org, and UPA is their abbreviation for their organization. And it's a really affordable general liability insurance for you. And you can, of course, get more information on their site when you go over there and sign up. So here are some of the top liability issues you may face out there. Now, it's one of those things where if you're thinking you're not going to make these mistakes, but if you're in a rush and if it's hot out, you're going to make some mistakes just because there's a lot of factors working against you out there. And I know this to be true for myself, that when I'm rushing, I tend to second guess myself, and I also tend to make slight errors that I would never make when I'm not rushing. So rushing is pretty dangerous, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Let's say you have an appointment to get to at 2 o'clock and you're trying to get all your pools done, or you're a little bit late because there was a problem at a pool and you're trying to finish your route and get back before traffic starts. I understand these factors are working against you to make clear decisions, but it just takes a minute to make sure you double check everything. And that's the key, I think, to any way of avoiding a mistake. And the days kind of get blurred together. And I've been out there before, and I've actually been kind of tired and overworked, and I've actually forgot what service day it was sometimes. And, you know, it's one of those things that does happen. So your mental fatigue is a factor, but always double checking things is important. And second guessing yourself, did I do that, is another problem. When you're overextended and tired, you can't remember if you did something that you were supposed to do. So case in point, whenever you get to a pool with any kind of safety gate around the pool or any kind of automatic cover, you want to be extra careful that you don't cut any corners mentally when you're at that stop. So in other words, even if you're in the biggest rush that day to get things done, at these pools, put the brakes on so that you can kind of focus and be hyper-focused. You're not going to make these mistakes. So a lot of customers have those mesh gates that supposedly self-close and lock, but you'll find out on your route that a lot of them don't self-lock. Yes, when they're brand new, they tend to slam shut and lock, no problem. But as they get older, sometimes they're not installed properly. There's a little bit of a gap and they don't quite close all the way. So it's your job to make sure, especially with small children around or pets that they want to keep out of that pool area, that you do close that gate. And the way I double check is I actually make sure that I hear it click. If it doesn't click, I'll push it shut, and then I'll actually pull on it to see if I can open it up again. And that's kind of a way to double check that. Now, there's no gate that's 100% childproof. Kids can find ways to get over things, but at least you're not liable for that. And if you wanted to, you can take a picture of it and the picture will be time stamped so that you know that you've closed that gate. To me, that's kind of going a little bit too far, but as long as I close it, pull on it to make sure I close the gate, I'm fine. I can sleep at night knowing that I actually closed the gate. Same thing goes for the gates into the property itself. Sometimes the gates get kind of sticky and they don't close all the way. I've had customers call me before, and luckily nothing's happened, but they've called me and said, hey, you left the back gate a little bit ajar. That's my mistake. And so I try to avoid that by definitely double checking. So I'll do the same exact thing I do with the mesh gates. I'll close the wood gate or the metal gate, and then I'll actually reach up and pull on the top of it to make sure that it's closed. If there's a lock on it, I'll turn the handle to make sure that it's locked. And if it's a keypad type thing, I'll make sure I pull on that gate to make sure that the keypad engaged. So there's all kinds of things you can do, but the number one thing you can do is actually double check that gate before you leave and pull on it and to make sure that you have it shut tight. There really is no margin for error, and there's no courtesy either with the gate. So let's say you see the landscaper pulling up, and I've done this before. He's pulling up, and it'd be logical just to kind of, let him handle it and close the gate, especially if there's no pets and you have it propped open. Sometimes I'll do that to get equipment back. But again, there's no courtesy when it comes to gates, so I'll close it. And sometimes I'll just tell the landscaper, hey, I have to close the gate after I leave or whatever. And they understand. There's no courtesy for them either. I've been at pool stops before where they're leaving and they actually close the gate on me and I'm still back there. So it's kind of one of those things where you build that in mentally that the gate's always closed no matter what. And even if the customer says, oh, I'm going to be going back there with something, you can leave the gate unlocked. I always just lock it or latch it to make sure that I protect myself. Even if you don't lock it all the way, you can at least put the lock through there, and that way you're protecting yourself from any liability, and the customer is going to go there and just open it up again maybe 2 minutes after you're done. So that's an important factor. Automatic covers, these are something that I've talked about before. A lot of customers will tell you they're going to use the pool later, so go ahead and leave the cover open when you service the pool. I never do. I always tell them, oh, it's just part of my policy that I'll close it. And besides that, it'll actually keep the water warmer for you. So as a policy, I'm always going to close the cover when I finish the stop. These are the ones with the key that you can turn. There's a motor, and then the cover retracts. So occasionally they'll break. They'll have something wrong with the, on one side of it, it'll maybe jam or it's a little bit crooked, and it won't open all the way or close all the way. That's a problem. That needs to be addressed right away with the customer. And so if you can't close the cover, which has happened before, I make sure that I let the customer know right away through a text message that, oh, I was back at your stop at your pool today. I retracted the cover and then it stopped closing, after, 10 seconds. It got a little bit closed, but it's pretty much wide open. And so if you can call the cover company out there, and it's good if you have the cover company information as well, so that you can call them for the customer. Sometimes that's even better. And so you'll let the customer know, and then you can actually call the cover company yourself. Now, there's a way to manually close it, but it's complicated. You need 2 people usually, and I don't mess with it. Sometimes I'll try to reset the motor if I have time. There's actually a reset button on a lot of these automatic cover motors. Sometimes that does the trick, but sometimes you just can't close the cover. Now, when I get to the stop, if it's open already, like customers using their pool earlier, or they're going to use it later and they have it open, I'll actually close it still, and they can open it again later. Same thing goes with any kind of other covers that you may have out there. If you're unlucky enough to have one of those Spider-Man kind of net covers on the pool, and a customer said they're going to use the pool later, I always cover that also and let the customer deal with, unlatching it with the pulley or, getting it off so that they can swim later. But I always cover those as well. And by the way, I don't really service pools with the Spider-Man mesh covers because it's really time consuming. And to me, it's just not worth it. But, a lot of times you can't avoid that. But make sure you cover that as well before you leave. Again, all these things are to cover your bases so that you're not the last one holding the bag if something were to happen. You're doing your job and you're covering the pool in every circumstance possible. Let me talk a little bit about muriatic acid and the staining properties of it, because if you've been doing service long enough, you've probably spilled some of it, hopefully nowhere where no one noticed it, and hopefully not to the degree where the customer is like, hey, I noticed all these little discolorations on my pool deck. What happened? Now, there's instances that I've seen in my group where it's a brand new pool, and one of them was actually pretty funny, but this particular homeowner was really protective of his deck, and the pool, I guess, was like about a year old at this time, maybe right around there. But he actually had those little blue booties that you would have, like if you ever go to an open house and the realtor wants you to put those on. By the way, there's some liability issues with that, walking on carpet and slipping. But, he actually had these booties out there, and he wanted a technician to put these on every time he serviced the pool, which I thought was actually pretty smart because you never know what's going to happen. And so in that case, that technician has to be extremely careful when they're bringing acid over there so they don't spill on the deck. If the customer wants him to wear booties on his deck, it's even worse if you were to spill something. But getting back to the acid and the potential to stain cement or decks or whatever, it is really a pretty hazardous product that we carry, and it does have really easy staining properties. I should say it burns the plaster, it burns the cement, basically. Probably not the plaster because there's water in the pool, but it'll burn the cement, it'll burn the wood deck, it'll burn anything it touches. Now, I've had the unfortunate privilege of talking to a customer after I spilled some on the deck back there. Now, there's a few things you can do to cure this. I think the easiest thing, and something that works fairly well if the deck is older or the cement is older. When I say deck, I'm talking about cement, basically, not a wood deck, although those do exist, but not very common in California. So the cement deck, basically, if there's a section, usually they're broken off in sections if they put it in correctly, because the ground expands and contracts, and if you don't have dividers, the cement's gonna crack. So sometimes you're lucky enough to have a piece of cement where you spilled the acid, and you can actually power wash that entire area, kind of blend it together. Now, some guys will do like a light acid wash to blend it in together. I don't do that. I'll just use the power washer to kind of match it the best I can, and then over time that stain should fade in with the rest of that particular deck. Now, I've seen pictures of people that have dropped acid like 30 feet in a row, like there's little dots for 30 feet as they're walking out of the gate. That's more problematic, and that may require you to pressure wash the entire backyard. I've never really heard of anyone asking you to replace their deck before, because a lot of that can be treated. If necessary, you can call in a general contractor or a landscape company, and they can pretty much get everything back to the way it's supposed to look without you having to replace the cement. So it's not the end of the world, but there's liability there. Will it reach your deductible? I don't know, but it's something that you have to just be careful with. So I always have the acid either in my service cart or in a tote, and I never put it on the deck. And this is something also they have to be aware of. Sometimes acid might spill in your bed of your truck, get on your tote, and you bring it back there, and you put it down, and it could leave a little stain. So be really careful with all of your equipment, and be really diligent with the muriatic acid, because it can stain a customer's property very easily. One little drop here and there could really ruin the deck and cause you a lot of headaches and a lot of unnecessary follow-up work afterwards. And by the way, that's a liability issue that maybe is not a monetary liability issue, but it's one that's going to cost you time and energy, like I mentioned. It may even cost you the account. So sometimes liability isn't about money, it's about customer relationships and the headache factor. And of course, there are liability issues with muriatic acid. I was working for a company way back in 1990, believe it or not, that hired this person to do some commercial pools for them. It was kind of like the Wild West back then. It wasn't where it was highly regulated. I mean, of course, you had the health department, but this was like a kid doing this commercial pool. And he happened to leave a gallon of muriatic acid at the stop with the lid off on the pool deck. And the management company called, of course. They were, really upset. But that could have been a really dangerous situation. Luckily, no kids handled it. No one drank it. No one poured it anywhere. But of course, he was terminated for that kind of mental error. Not only leaving the gallon of acid there, but leaving the lid off of it. And I still remember this to this day, because that's kind of a pretty big liability thing that stuck with me. So I'm really careful with acid in every capacity. Now let me finish with the one we talked about with the UPA on the UPA podcast, and that's filling the pool with water. This is a pretty huge liability issue And this could be something that gets you in a lot of trouble, and you could lose the account, which happens, of course, if you were to flood the pool or flood the backyard. Now, the trick with putting your truck keys on there on the fill line, it does work. It's pretty effective, but there are instances where you may take your keys off, or you may have to get something out of your truck and you forget to put them back on there. That's not the cure-all, end-all, kind of a fail-safe, but it does work. I would recommend not filling the pools. You really can't do much while you're there anyway. What's 10 minutes of water going to do for that pool? If it is below the skimmer line, you may just want to turn the pool off and let the customer know that you left the pool off because the water is too low and they can fill it when they get home. A lot of times texting the customer will get them to fill it pretty quickly, and that's what I usually do. I'll text them. Sometimes I'll send a picture to them saying, oh, your pool water's low. And sometimes if it's extremely low, I'll take a picture because then they'll be like, oh yeah, I got to put water in there. I forgot the other, last few days to add water. And it kind of triggers them to do that. Now, if they overflow their pool, that's on them. And customers sometimes have tricks of their own to make sure they don't overfill their pool. I'll give you a couple that I thought were pretty effective, but one of them actually failed the customer. One is he'll put his car keys there before he has to go somewhere in 20 minutes. And that way he remembers to turn off the water before he leaves. Kind of like our trick with our truck keys as well. But one customer was telling me, I went there and the pool was like really full, and he's like, yeah, I did my little trick where I put my keys there when I'm leaving for an appointment, but they canceled and I forgot, and I left the pool on for like an hour. So that could happen, and that's definitely not a 100% fail safe. Another customer, which I thought was really cool, he's an older guy and kind of like a joker kind of person. He'll put this really weird hat on. He showed me the hat. It's like this funky hat that you would never wear out in public. But he'll wear it around the house while the pool is filling. And that's his signal that he's filling the pool. And his wife will be like, hey, you're wearing the hat. You turned the water off. And that's kind of his way of remembering. So it is kind of dangerous even for the homeowner to fill his pool. That's why I like auto fills. I like the Pool Sentry where you put a garden hose there. Now there's some automatic kind of timers for a hose line. Those are okay. But I've had those malfunction, or I've seen those malfunction on the customer before, where it's supposed to only fill the pool for like 5 minutes a day, but it's running for like 20 minutes. So it's something that consider. It's not a bad idea, but it can also malfunction. Bottom line, I think an autofill is great, but sometimes the autofills malfunction as well, and they're continuously filling the pool. So it's something where filling the pool is a liability, and if you're not getting it at this point, that a customer can overfill the pool, autofills can fail, and of course you as a pool service provider can fail to remember to turn it off. So filling the pool is a liability issue, and I'd rather the customer be liable for it than you and your company. So make it a rule and tell your employees this, because if you don't tell your employees, they're going to fill the pool. This happened to one of my members like a month ago where the employee filled the pool. It wasn't something that he clearly expressed to them. And I believe the water bill was somewhere around $600. It was in a rural area of Texas, so the water just kept running out there. But the water bill was pretty expensive, and it's something that you could get into a lot of trouble with. So make sure everyone on your team knows that we don't fill pools out on the route. And if you're thinking about getting some general liability insurance, definitely check out UPA, UnitedPoolAssociation.org, and you can get covered there. It's really inexpensive, and it's a way to kind of have peace of mind when you're out there on your service route. And if there's any kind of accident or oversight, you'll know that you're covered. But if you're thinking and you're careful, you probably will never have an incident in your professional career. If you're looking for other podcast recordings, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the podcast banner, click on the banner, click on the podcast icon, and there'll be a drop-down menu of 1,600 podcasts for you to listen to. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.